what's up to the congregation. Just playing some FM dance. This one is by a guy named M. Gench. Don't know who that is, but he sure knows how to make a awesome patch. Pretty simple too when you look at it. He got a kick, he got a hat, he got his oscillator, and he's not using a filter, he's FMing it, as he called it, FM dance, but it gets the job done. Here's a filter over here though. Anyway, I would like to say thank you to everyone for subscribing and tuning in. Someone expressed support for the Patreon, and I can tell you Patreon is going up soon, as soon as I can get it put together. I've been going through some stuff over here, medical issue junk, but I'm going to try and stick to my one stream a day or one stream every 24 hours schedule, but I cannot guarantee that will happen. So if I miss a day, bear with me, and I'll be back soon after. But yeah, I see about one subscriber a day joining, and it makes me happy to see that. That's why I do this, for the people who are tuning in. Even my friends, my synth buddies, they don't really listen to this stream because, number one, they have very limited time on their hands, and number two, they would rather listen to the music tracks that I made. But I like uploading both. I was thinking about splitting the channel, but I think I'm just going to stick with the one for now. So keep tuning in, keep subscribing, keep posting your comments so I can know what you're interested in, and I will do more of that. If you have an idea for a patch or want me to run through a module or explain something, I will try my best to do that. So the only way I can know is if you leave me feedback, so please do. In a previous stream, we had the FM patches from this cool Modular book by a guy named James Clark. I had missed a section of it, and I wanted to just go back to it and mention it, because as I said, so many names I used to see from the Modular group turned out to be all these synth wizards of the last 2 decades. Not all of them are here, but I wanted to read the ones that he put in his acknowledgments. So he has Rob Horjike as the first one. Then we got this guy, Woot Blommers. Woot is the guy who, I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly, I'm probably not. He's the guy who created FM for Xmas, which was a huge amount of DX7 patches converted for use on the Modular. So you could take one of your old DX7 patches, which is like a MIDI dump, a small, I don't know, like say 56 KB, and you could load it into this program that I think Woot and his friends wrote, and it would spit out a patch that was compliant with the Modular, and you could load it up and it would play almost exactly the same sound, because the DX7 had 6 sine waves, and the Modular could make 6 sine waves, and they pretty much sounded the same. Other people here, Jan Punter, Kees Vandermarl, I don't know those guys. This guy I know, Roland Kuit. A ton of the patches in the patch archive are made by this guy, very good programmer. Eiko Durnekamp, Robin Whittle, Chet Singer, Dave Peck, Sam Streeper, and Kalex Patterson. I admit I don't know those people either, but just for the refreshment of my memory over Woot and Roland is enough for me to want to drop these names in there. So, yeah, cool people who did cool things. Of course, you can still, I saw they were selling today, the company Seat Lombard is making Benjalin, which is designed by Rob Horjike, and it's also a popular Eurorack module. So anyway, besides thanking the ancient synth wizards, I'd like to click on a different button here today. Here we go. So we were looking at frequency modulation techniques. Let's go on to the next direct section directly after that, which is wave shaping. There's more to do in FM, but it gets pretty complex. And I thought what I'm really trying to do here is grab some of the low-hanging fruit. So this is also stuff, what we're going to do today is also stuff I think people should be able to implement on home systems, on VCV rack, on Eurorack. So in other words, the modules we're going to talk about today should be available in some similar form to most synth users out there. Heck, even some like hardware synth users may be able to get something out of it. So this is the patch we're going to build today. So let's dive in. I'm just going to, before I do that, I'm going to read a very brief statement. Where does he say? Okay, great. So, starting from the top. The timbre associated with a given waveform is determined primarily by the harmonic content of the waveform. Okay, pause there. So as we said, subtractive synthesis takes a buzzy, heavily harmonic waveform and then subtracts some of those harmonics using filters. Continue reading. One can create new harmonics by passing the waveform through a nonlinear element, normally referred to as a wave shaper. Pause. Okay, so subtractive says we got a lot of harmonics, let's cut some of them out. We're doing the opposite here. We're saying we have less harmonics and we're going to add more. We've talked about this before, but the oscillator we're probably going to be using today is in triangle or sine wave mode. Sine wave having only one overtone, and triangle, which looks quite similar to a sine wave, having quite few. Again, you can, in the hardware synth world, the very popular Arturia Micro Brute is a synth that has a triangle output, and instead of running the triangle through a filter, which you can do and is still cool, you can also run it through a wave shaper. Which makes, as I said, which will take a wave which doesn't have too many overtones and make it buzzier, not less buzzy like a filter would. Let's continue reading. The principal Nord modular modules used for wave shaping are the signal shaper, wave wrapper, quantizer, diode, clip, and overdrive modules. Okay, we've talked about these before. Signal shaper is the one that I discovered in Jerome's patch. It was just labeled shaper. He was using it to adjust the sound of a drum. We talked about wave wrapper. We talked about overdrive and clip in the distortion factory. The quantizer, or as I more commonly use, the digitizer, is what we use to make low-bit Game Boy type sounds. And diode is the one we didn't really get into yet today, but in some ways is similar to clip. So yeah, let's again, going back to your own hardware system, you may have a wave wrapper. It could also be called a wave folder. Instead of a quantizer, it might be called a bit reducer or a bit reduction, something like that. Bit crusher is another similar function. For diode and clip, I think you'll see when we get to these what effect they have on the waveform. I know I just recently bought a passive module which is called a diode filter, and its goal is to make a distortion type sound. In other words, increasing harmonic content. And then signal shaper, I don't know how to describe this in a Eurorack module form, except that if you had something which allowed you to change from linear to logarithmic envelopes, that might do the job. So this one we may not find, but wave wrapper, quantizer, diode, and clip we should all find. And overdrive, well, if you don't have one in your synth already, you can connect a distortion pedal. That's not a joke. I mean, if you own a synth, you should definitely try running it through cheap guitar pedals. You will find some very interesting sounds. Some of them annoying, some of them will get you evicted, but some of them will also be interesting. So let's build it. I'm not going to read all through the other stuff. I don't really know too much about what nonlinear elements mean. As he says here, nonlinear elements are defined by the dependence of the element's output on the amplitude of the input. I don't know. But he does give me some tips, such as putting a compressor in the signal chain to offset some of the effects of the wave shaping in a positive way. So let's go ahead and build it. We're going to build it just the way he did it. So starting here, I got OSC slave A1 and ADSR without modulation. Let's do it. OSC slave A. We got ADSR. Looks right. Then he has, looking here, we're starting on the left side, drive, shaper, and diode. I'm not sure if drive is actually the overdrive, so I don't know where he got that. Let's just check here. See, this looks different. Okay, let's put that to one side. He may have been using an older version of the software when he did this. I don't know. Shaper and diode. Like, he talks about having to build his own rig modulator because they didn't have one when he first got the Nord Modular. I guess I got the Nord Modular when the software was already mature, so I didn't really go through that period. Okay, here we go. Signal shaper. Yep, that looks familiar. What was next? Wrong screen. Diode and clip. Diode processing. There we go. And clip. If you're wise, you'll be able to just look at diode and see what he's trying to do. Then we got wave wrap and compressor. So all these audio processors are stacking on the left here. Compressor is, of course, an audio processor as well. But his real function here is just to sort of smooth out the sound and make it even so it doesn't jump around all over the place. Okay, so on the right-hand side, keyboard output and master OSC. I guess I won't need these bad boys today. Keyboard, I hope it's this one. We'll find out. Excuse me, and master oscillator. Keep clicking the wrong one. 2 LFO slaves, and they are both triangle waves. Probably for modulating the inputs of the audio sounds. And then we've got the output module here. He's labeled with his name, J.J. Clark. And then we've got another ADSR and a classic LP filter. Okay, so I guess it's fair to say, although we're not doing subtractive synthesis here, we are using a lot of the elements of subtractive synthesis. We've got a classic low-pass filter. That's one of them. We've got an ADSR. We've got 2 ADSRs. It's also something you'd find. And since we're not sure where he got the drive module, I'm going to leave overdrive in there. And now I got to patch it up. So the first one Master to slave and keyboard to gate and gate, right? That seems obvious. So there's a keyboard out. He's going to gate the ADSR and the other one. It's a pretty normal setup. And then slave to master. I guess we're going to need my little tool called keyboard floater. There's the guy. Hey, buddy. Because he's going to play the notes when all the audio cables are connected. And over here we're going slave 1. Oh, he used a... Yeah, okay, yeah, that makes sense. He used a master OSC and a slave OSC to save processing power. So most of these red cables are going right to left here, top to bottom. So let's wire those in. By the way, I think all these patches are still up on his site, but I like building it myself so we can learn something from it and see the step-by-step process. So really, these are all just audio processors in a chain. They don't have to be in this order. I'm sure he's put them in an optimal order, but there's no reason one has to come first and one has to come second. You see lots of these in fixed configurations. Like, for example, if you have a hardware synth like a microKORG, they probably have a filter, and then later on in the circuit near the end, they have a delay. But what if you wanted to put the delay before the filter? Well, luckily in a modular you could. That's one of the freedoms you have, and you absolutely should be experimenting with those to get more interesting sounds. So basically he went through all these, as he called them, nonlinear audio processors. Then he compressed them to smooth out the sound. Now he's dropping it in a filter just because it'll probably make it even more musical or usable. Otherwise, it would just be an incredibly distorted waveform. And then he sends it up to this envelope, and the envelope goes into the outputs. So that's his. If we look just at red, make the grays go away. Look at red, so we got the oscillator going through all the processors, into the compressor, into the filter, into the envelope, and out. And actually, it looks like we got two envelopes here. And yeah, he's going through both of them. Usually you might expect the second envelope to be for the filter's use, but that's not the case in this one. We're going to have to match the ADSR settings. This looks like 10 milliseconds, 730, 37, and 1.5. Let's do that. 10 and 730. Went past it. There we go. 730 something. 37.5 and 1.5. 37. These are pretty approximate. You don't have to get exactly there. 1.5 second release is quite long, so he's definitely letting the note hang after you release your key, probably so that the various distortions can pass through it smoothly. Here this is called, oh, okay, maybe I know what he's doing. He's labeled this drive, but it doesn't look like our drive module. It looks like a constant module. Is that what it is? Control. Notice that this is a 0.0% module. Yep. And then what he did is he wired it into the amp input, and he set it at 50. So I guess what I'm saying here is I think he may have created overdrive not using an overdrive module of any kind, but by cranking up the input into the amp. So let's take him at his word, or on my analysis of what I think is his word, and just relabel that drive so that we know later what it was. A constant value is just a number, and it's just a CV amount that doesn't change, like an LFO set to 1 point that doesn't wobble. And he's got his set at 50 and plugged into the amp here, so I'm going to assume that's the distortion that he's going for. Let's look at his other settings. Okay, so this one is at 0.9995. I don't know if that... What the... I don't know how to get... Okay, I'm going to leave that as it is. This one is on triangle wave. Yeah, we did these already. Let's match the other settings. Shaper mode is using the far left setting and diode the middle. So shaper and diode. And then we got clip and wave wrap. And you can see they're all... Wrap is real low. Clip is a bit higher. So dial clipper up and wrap just a little bit. You can see it's on from the graph. It looks kind of like what I've got, right? And then make sure to set these. This amount is about, looks like a little past 9 o'clock, and this one looks like 8 o'clock. I never think of those terms when I'm actually programming, but I have to express them to y'all in some kind of a way. And then he had them plugged into what I assume are the LFOs, which are set kind of like this. Cute. I'm not going to stress too much about the exact number for the LFOs. It's probably not a game changer. The master OSC seems to be set normally. So he's already got some modulation. I haven't played a note yet, but I can tell when I hit one, at least these two are going to be causing, time-dependent changes in the sound. They're going to wobble or buzz the sound in interesting ways. Do I have to set all these the same? Let's see here. Fast 210 minus 15. Darn it. Fast 210 minus 15. Okay, that wasn't so hard. 441 and minus 3. And limiter off. Okay, got it. How about this bad boy? Okay, I was right. Although this guy is going through this second envelope, the envelope is also affecting the filter, which is pretty typical. So we'll dial it up here. We'll connect it to the envelope output. We'll be doing those envelope settings in a second. It's in 24 dB mode, so we don't have to change that. We got to open this up to 700 and something, and then have the res is quite down at 6. So you're going to get 6. This would be as good as a time as any to say, we talk about how different modules can do the similar job or different job. One of the biggest areas in which filters are not the same is what resonance does to them. Sometimes if you dial resonance up, depending on the filter design, it may cut your bass frequencies out because of, phase cancellation or, noise goblins or whatever you have. I don't know the reason, it's just the way the filter is designed. Other filters have been designed so that when the resonance is turned up, which is feedback, not a name for feedback, it does not remove the bass frequencies. The most famous one I can think of is the one from IntelliGel, the Core Gasmatron or whatever. That's a bit older now, but I knew the design for that one was done in that particular way. That was one of the things they were proud of with it. And it is a useful function to have. I'm just saying, just because you've got a filter at home and you set it to 784 and the resonance at 6, you may get a drastically different sound than mine, because mine is a digital one, and because filters just have so much variation in how they sound and how they respond. the hardware components that were used to build them, they're all very different. For ADSRs, they're mostly similar, and at least here I chose to try and match his settings because I think he'll probably have had them relatively meticulously set up. So I think we've done it. We've reached the end of the signal chain. That's how I programmed this, going through from the oscillator all the way through to the outputs. We've got the LFO sitting here. We got the keyboard connected. Remember, the note doesn't need to be connected in Nord Modular. So it's finally time. This reminds me of that other patch where I counted down the kick drum sound and it sounded like a total crap depository. But anyway, let's hear what we get. Oh, nothing. Didn't hear any sound. Everything is connected, so what am I doing wrong? I'm not even seeing any lights light up here. So I feel, let's turn some of the cables back on. Looks like old Frank forgot to connect this cable. There we go. Try again. Okay. Okay, cool. So, as I guessed, the LFO was modulating the wave wrapper and the clipper. I think I saw the changes I heard in the sound were when this second one, which is connected to wave wrapper, activated. Cool. So let's just save this for now. What should we call this? Let's look at the... Oops, we're in the wrong folder anyway. Streaming patch archive. Right, so we named these ones after Mr. Clark. So let's stick with that naming convention. So we had 44 and 45, so we're on 46. Clark. And we're going to call this, what did we call the name of this synthesis method? Wave shaping, of course. Clark wave shape. And that's as good a... it's a little bit too long for the synth name, but that's okay. I'm going to go ahead and save it in the synth right now, but I'm not done here. I want to keep exploring. This is as good a reminder as any. Wave shaping. Why do we call it wave shaping? Well, that's exactly what we're doing. Let's look here. The shaper affects how the curve of the wave is formed. As we talked about before, in the middle it's linear. On the right we have exponential 1 and 2. And to the left we have logarithmic 1 and 2. So, again, not a math guy, but I kind of don't have to be one. All I have to do is know that it's going to change my wave in certain ways. I'll admit that if I had a better mathier background, I could probably explain to you why exactly changing the shape of the wave changes the sound in your ear. I'm not a mathy guy, so I can't really do that right now, but I can tell you that in your VCAs and in your envelopes, you're going to find different settings for linear and logarithmic, and at the very least, play around with them, see what they get you. See how they change the sound, even if you can't prove to someone that that's actually causing an X+1 change in the sound. It's fine. You still, if it sounds good, it sounds good. And then let's look here. We're also shaping the wave. The wave here, the diode processor is off, and it allows the top and the bottom of the waveform to pass through. Here, it allows the top to pass through, and it erases the waveform from the bottom. And here, it flips the second half of the waveform so that instead of playing it on the lower half of the shape, it plays it in the upper half. So all of these we can mess around with. I'm going to set the... There's our keyboard floater. So let's set him to repeat. And now let's mess with some of these. Well, certainly we're getting more distortion from the log side. Wow, that almost changed the octave. That's a big change. Listen to that. For me, I can really hear the triangle wave here. This has cut some of the triangleness out of it. Almost sounds sawtoothy. And again, we seem to be losing the lower octaves. Here it sounds more like a bass, right? But we're getting higher. And now it's like we've lost a lower octave. So all interesting changes. Nothing wrong or right about any of them. Let's try some of these. Cool. Wow, that's awesome. This LFO is on a slower cycle, but I can definitely hear the sound of the clip now. I'm going to turn off the blue cables. Just turn it down a little bit for a sec. So same kind of thing. You see how diode processor here was cutting out half the waveform, and this one is cutting the second half and then flipping it up? Well, look at what clip is doing. Just look at this little green screen. He's literally smushing the top part of the signal and not allowing it through. If he was on a 0 setting, he would allow everything through, but here he's preventing that top bit from getting through. And I can also click this one, the symmetric, and now he's cutting off the top and the bottom. Usually this would reduce the sound a lot, but thanks to the compressor here, he's making up the gain. Whatever the clip robs from the waveform, the compressor does his job to bring back up to a more reasonable level. And of course this bad boy, we can make him do some weird stuff. Cool. So there's really so much going on here with these 4 relatively simple little circuits. Oh, we didn't figure out one thing. What about drive? So we said that connecting the output of this constant module should be setting the amplifier to a high level most of the time. And since it was named drive, I assume that Mr. Clark was trying to overdrive this input. And of course we are getting... It's hard to know where the buzziness is coming from. We're clearly getting distortion in the circuit. Let's just see what happens if we dial this down. Wow, so a much softer triangle wave. There's the distortion in the circuit there. I just took the diode and the shaper out. You can hear the triangle waveness of this, sort of like a hollow sound. Let's try dialing a drive down again. Well, it's getting quieter, but it's also getting less distorted. I can definitely hear distortion there. And it's not just these two guys. So there it is. maybe a little bit annoying to listen to the same note over and over. But it's certainly an interesting tone, and it's an interesting variation in sound. So I think what I hope to use this for in the future, I may not be... I wonder how many voices this can get. Can it get 3? It can get 2. It's a little bit too many. I wonder what I could cut out to get rid of that. Anyway, it might be nice to have this as a 3-voice synth, but whether you do or whether you don't, I think the key here is to keep the shaper, the diode, the clip, and the wave wrap. And to a lesser extent, if we don't use the drive in the way he did it inside the amplifier, we could use the drive just as its own processor. I guess I'll throw a shout out here as well. I've been watching that guy, Simon the Magpie, who has been using feedback circuits to... first, he started with a no-input mixer, which is a concert I'd seen. Then he applied it to no-input distortion pedals and foot pedals of all kinds, and came up with some very, very bizarre sounds. You can do this all in Modular as well if you want. You can set up feedback chains, and they will make some very, very unpredictable sounds. In the old days, they used to do this by... If you had a hardware synth, like, say, a Mini Moog or I think they used to do it on the MS-20, it might have 2 outputs, like one guitar-style output to go to your amp, and then another one for your headphones. But it also had an input. So they expected you to maybe send a cassette player or something to that input and then process that sound, or another synth to that input. But if you patched the same synth into itself so that it's... let's say it's a headphone jack, sent the signal out into the filter input, you would then be creating a feedback loop on itself, and it would make some truly bizarre sounds. If the amp was turned up, it could even cause damage to your gear. So luckily in a virtual environment like this, you can't hurt anything except maybe your ears or your relationships, but that's a little joke there. Yeah, I mean, you can't actually damage things with feedback in the digital world, so feel free to try. I don't think I've ever even crashed the editor from having feedback, so yeah, go ahead and experiment. So that's kind of it for wave shaping today. I'm actually running out of time. This is going to be my only stream today, and I may miss a couple days because of various things, but I'll be back as soon as humanly possible. And as I said, feel free to leave your comments about what you'd like to see in a stream, what you'd be interested in the Patreon. I'll put up some options, but yeah, whatever you guys are interested in is what I want to focus on, and keep people coming back to follow the stream more. So yeah, thanks again. I don't know if people are subscribing because their friends are recommending or what. I don't know where the subscribers are coming from, but they're trickling in slowly, and I sure do appreciate seeing those numbers, because I don't really play live gigs anymore, but so YouTube is my only real output for this stuff. So yeah, I know this is way too late to think it's cool to be a YouTuber, but as long as people like it, that's what I care about. So try it for yourself. Set up your own wave shaping sound and make this kind of sound, because sounds are cool, and you can tell them Father Moo told you. That's it for this session of church. We'll see you on Sunday. Peace out.